Now you need to be careful putting these things in. For some reason, people have a problem putting these things in, and I don't know why. You notice on the one side you have a number that's got a little clip on it. When you look at your battery, it's got this clip on it. It's got the little intrusion right here, right? Come over here, slide the little intrusion out into this, and then lay it over and snap it down. Don't just put it in there straight. If you do, you're going to come up and you're going to bend the camera on. Okay. So you got this guy right here. It's got a key in it. See the little slot right there? Oh, I'm sorry. I froze it when I camera's on. I'm looking right at it. It's just I had it froze when I did the row. Okay, so you got this key right here. So this is the female. Then on the side of your battery, you got this key right here, which is the male. So what you're going to do, you're going to come in here with an angle like this, put it in the key, and then slide it down. You hear it snap? Are we okay? As soon as you do that, then odds are the controller is going to automatically turn on. Okay, and the on screen, the default screen, is going to come up here and make a sound at you, right? And then it comes up and shows you my file. So my files. Now, if you want to turn it off, so y'all listen, we use the orange button to turn it on, and we use the orange button to select. We use the gray button to go back. Okay, y'all understand that? So if you hit the gray button right now, what happens?
It goes back.
It asks you, do you want to turn it off? Of course, the check by default. Now, how would I turn it off? So to turn it off, I'm going to select the what? I'm going to hit the orange button. I turned it off. If I didn't want to turn it off, if I accidentally went back too far, then just select the what? Select the X. I'm going to turn it back on. I'm just going to hit the orange button. Comes back, says a little note up here. Right up here in the upper right hand corner, this shows you the status of your battery. Okay. Right beside it, I don't know what that is. And if we had Bluetooth, this guy's got Bluetooth on it, but I don't want you pairing this thing with your phone. Y'all understand that? Okay. And it's a little complicated too to pair. So this is our main menu, and it comes up and shows me what? Yeah, my files. Now this is where you're going to put all your offline programs at when you upload them into the robot. Okay. So let's go through this menu right now and see what we got available. So let's go to the left. And what does it say? Says try me. Okay, are y'all doing this with me? So y'all can see. Now what try me, so let's hit try me, and what is it going to say? Tricolor. So if I've got a tricolor sensor hooked up to this thing, then I can play around with it. Okay, so let's go through our sensors. Try touch sensor. Y'all see that? Okay. Then try light sensor. Now this is what we got. We don't have a color sensor hooked up. It didn't come with our kit. So we've got a light sensor. So if I wanted to see if that thing was working, then I could do this, or that's not true. This is what we're going to use for this lab. So what we're going to do, the next lab we're going to do, once you got your kit inventory, is we're going to play around with sensors. And what are the sensors on this trainer? Motor. So we have this sensor right here. This is what? This is a sound sensor, right? We have this sensor right here. This is a what? well, get by somebody, get with somebody else. We'll figure that out when we get to the lab. Okay. So this is what? Ultrasonics, right? This is what? Okay. And I'm missing a sensor. We should have two light sensors. And then this is our touch, tactical, or this is basically a limit switch. Say what we call a push type limit switch. This is the only digital sensor we have in our lab. All the rest of them are analog sensors. This guy's either pressed or not pressed, right? On or off. Okay. Are you okay? So what we're going to do in this next lab is we're going to come up here. Here's our ultrasonic sensor. And you're going to do what the lab tells you to do. So the lab is going to say, okay, I don't remember what the little program does, but these are little programs. So you're not actually looking at the output of the sensor, but you can tell if it works or not, right? Does that make sense? Then I go to the right again. What do we have? Tri-motor. The motor is a servo motor, so that has a sensor inside of it, right? And so it provides feedback. Oops, wrong button, Rich. Tri-sound, tri-color, and then it starts over. Okay, so that's the menu. This is the menu we're going to play around in the next lab we're going to do, and all we're going to do is just play around with these sensors. Of course, we use the sound sensor to measure what? Sound. We use the light sensor to measure light. This can be used as a diffuse sensor. What's a diffuse sensor? Yeah, it actually bounces off the target. Or it can be used as an ambient light sensor. What's an ambient light sensor? It just senses the surrounding light. And are we okay? And we're going to use ultrasonics to sense what? Ultrasonics to sense distance. We're going to use ultrasonics to sense distance. Right? Y'all understand? So let's hit the gray button and go back. And we're not going to go to settings. Software files or my files, this is where you're going to store your offline programs at. And what I'm going to get you to do is bring yours up to me. So if any of the programs are left over from last class, I could do what? Delete them. Oh yeah. NXT files, we're not going to need that. Oops, sorry. Let me go back. So the only thing you're going to fool around with there is just my files. Don't get into any of those files. If you screw around with the NXT files, then what's going to happen is that program where we play around with the sound, you might do what? You might delete it. So, okay, so everybody back to my files. Okay, so let's go to the right. This says what? NXT programs. This is what we're going to use to create online programs, right? And remember, the online programming for the NXT is very limited on what we can do. Anybody remember how it goes? We have 5 blocks that we can program into. So these, while we're building the robot, so once we get through the sensor lab, then we'll start building the robot, and you're going to build it in stages. And what you're going to do is you're going to run these little programs, you're going to enter these little online programs to verify your construction. Okay. And the sequence for the online programs are, we have 5 blocks. And the blocks it goes motor, I'm sorry. Yeah, motor, sensor, motor. Oops, left one. Sensor. And this is, we can either cause the program to stop, or we can cause the program to loop. So that's the only two options you have with the fifth block. If you leave a block blank when you run over the program, it will skip over. So the first program we're going to do, I think, is we're going to run the motor forward for so long. And we're not going to do a sensor. And I think the next thing we're going to do is like back up and turn. And we're not going to do a sensor. And then we're going to set it up to loop. So the robot is just going to basically run in a rectangle. So it's going to go up, back up, take off, back up, take off, right? You understand that? And this is after we build the cradle and put the actual chassis, and we put two motors on there, and that's all we've got on there. We don't have any sensors on there. So all we're doing is just verifying the motors, right? You understand that? By the way, we got these little numbers. Sometimes you got two options when you do your online programming. You got this, which means the motors are going to run unlimited. Or you're going to have a little number up here, like a 5. And that means it's going to run it for 5 revolutions. So 5 would be closed loop. Unlimited would be what? Open loop, which means we'll depend on a sensor. Does that make sense? Everybody okay? So these are online programming. So while we're building the robot, it's going to say, okay, you're going to put on the sound sensor. And then it's going to say, put this little online program in here to verify the sound sensor works. And then you're going to put the ultrasonic sensor on there, right? You're going to start off by just putting the motors and the controller on there. You don't have any sensors, so we're going to verify the motors. Okay? Everybody understand that? So this is where we're going to enter those NXT programs at on this, using this option right here. Okay, next, what does it say? We're not going to use data log, but we are going to use the next one. What does it say? View. Now, a sensor like the ultrasonic sensor, this is an analog sensor. But my program does not understand analog. It's going to be what we turn off or on. So all your input ports has a digital A to D converter on it. Now, the online programming, you can't set that. You can't set the sensitivity on online programming. But offline programming, you can set what the sensor puts out to represent an on and what it does to represent a what? Off. So what you have to do, if I wanted my robot to go up 6 inches, then what I'm going to have to do is I want to know what this ultrasonic puts out when it sees 6 inches. So what we have the ability to do is to look at the signal before it goes to the A to D converter. So let me find one of my cables. Oh, there's my sound sensor. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook up my ultrasonic sensor. So what happens, you want it to follow that white line over there. Well, how in the world does the sensor know what the white line is and what the floor is? So what do? You go over there and see what it puts out, right? You understand? So if we wanted to follow the white line, so what we wanted to do, if it sees the gray, we want it to turn back into the white, right? Y'all understand that? Well, what we have to do is we have to calibrate our program to say, okay, what is white and what is dark, right? Y'all understand that? So what I'm going to do, so down at the bottom, these are 1, 2, 3, 4. These are our input ports down here. So input port, this is where you're going to hook your sensors. And then ABC, these are your I/O ports. This is where you're going to hook your motors. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ultrasonic sensor, I'm going to hook it up to a port, and then I'm going to say view, and then what's the next thing it asks for? No, it asks for the sensor. So the default is the sound. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to go up here and I'm going to find my ultrasonic sensor. Temperature, motor rotations, motor degrees, touch, ultrasonics. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to select my ultrasonics. Then it's going to ask me, what does it ask me now? What port I haven't looked up. I come down here. By the way, when you build your kit, these ports are going to be defined for you. Okay, you understand? Because these little old programs, so when you do online programming, they take by default that these sensors are hooked up to a different port. So I'm going to say it's hooked up to port 1. And here the ultrasonic sensor is working. So now what I can do, notice I'm moving it up, and what does my display get? It says 7 inches. And I move it down. So really, I could do one or two things. I could say, okay, I want my thing to turn when it gets this far, right? Or I could go over there and just set the thing down, put it on view, and see what it shows, right? So this is what we're going to use to calibrate our sensor. Does that make sense? And then when I do my online programming, dang it. I'm looking for my Lego program. Not this one. This is for the new robot. Well, dang, guy. Oh, there it is, right in front of me. So this is the NXT. I don't want y'all to open it up. We'll have another program. This is the NXTG programming language. This is the way we program this robot offline. Okay. Oops. So this is NXT programming right here. So if I wanted to, I'm going to pull down, this is sensors. What sensor am I using? Ultrasonics. And then we're going to just pull that block in there. Now notice what happens as soon as I turn on ultrasonics, then we get this guy right here. First thing it says, okay, which port do you have it connected to? Okay, so, but right now it thinks it's going to be on port 4. So what happens later on when you modify your robot for your competition, it's going to take for granted that you built the robot. And so when you build the robot, it's going to tell you to hook up your ultrasonic sensor to port 1, to port 4. Does that make sense? If you move it for your competition, then what do you have to do? Well, you have to tell the program that now it's on port 1. Right? You understand that? Yes or no? So when you build the robot, it's going to tell you where to hook up the ultrasonic sensor to. But when you do your competition, what can you do? Yeah, you can modify the robot to, so if you want to move those things around. And by the way, the only sensors that it's got is the only sensor that the NXT program gives you a block for is what? It gives you a timer, which is not a sensor. What sensor would this be? Touch. What sensor would this be? Light. What sensor would this be? Sound. What would this be? Well, we got all these other sensors we can buy. I mean, you can buy all types of sensors. Well, notice right here it says sensor, And then I can come down here, and these are all the sensors supported by this guy. So if I didn't want to use that, then I could come over here and tell it to receive a message. So we can literally hook two NXTs together, or not even hook them together, and they can communicate with each other through Bluetooth, which is really, really neat. Rotation sensor, color sensor, NXT buttons. So we could actually input from the buttons, right, to understand that. Touch sensor, emitter out. But let's say I had a temperature sensor. I bought a temperature sensor. Well, what I would do is so did you see what happened? That threw the block up there for the temperature sensor. So what I'm saying is that if you use this menu right here, these are the sensors that you got. But all you have to do is just, if you've got a temperature sensor, just throw one of these sensors in there and then do what? And then change it from the menu. Of course, we're not going to have to do that. So what type of sensor do I have? Now look what I have the ability to do right here. This is where we set the sensitivity. Does that make sense? So right now we're looking for that to be less than 50 inches. Right? So this guy would be turning all the time, 50 inches. So, but if I wanted it to turn when it was less than 6, then I could come down here and put it on, well, 7. And now when it got within 7 inches, it's going to do something, right? Does that make sense? We would combine this with the motor command. So what I'm saying is that this is okay on the ultrasonic sensor because it puts out inches, but your sound sensor is not going to put out inches. It's going to put out a sound, right? You understand? Your color or your light sensor is going to put out a light, and then what you it's not going to be in inches. What it's going to be is going to be in a certain amount of color. And how do you know what to set? Well, you use the what? You use the view, right? You understand that. And then you record what you want the thing to see. Does that make sense? So what we're going to do, one of the things we're going to do is we're going to drive one of our plastic balls, and we're going to use the light sensor. Well, how do I know? And I want the robot to approach the ball until it gets up to really close. Well, how am I going to set that really close? Well, I'm going to take my robot over there. I'm going to put my T down. I'm going to go over there and put it how close I want it to be to that ball. And I'm going to go and view the output of the light sensor. And if it says 15, then I'm going to set this sensitivity to what? 15. And then when that thing comes up and sees 15, we're going to stop it and then do what? And then swing the golf club. But how do you know it? Well, the only way you're going to do it is to use the what? Is to use the view. So if you use the view, what can you do? You can actually see the output of the sensor. So that gives you that tells you where you need to set this slide to represent what the program sees as an on or an off or a 1 or a 0. Does that make sense? Okay. So we're going to use that view a lot especially when you get into your competitions, right? Does that make? It's on your desktop, but we're not going to do it yet. What we're going to do while we're building the robot, we're going to use the online programming. So what I don't want you to do right now is get the two confused. All I wanted to do is show you why we use the view. Why don't we use the view option on our controller? So you can see the output of the sensor. So what you can do is you can put so I'll go over there when I want to set it to follow the white line. I'll go over there and I'll put it on the white line. I'll record that distance. Then I'll come over there and I'll put it on the floor. I'll record that distance and I'll set my sensitivity in the middle. Does that make sense? And how do I know to do that? Well, the only way I know how to do that if I can see what it outputs when it sees that piece of white tape and when it sees this gray floor. This gray floor is not black, right? You understand? And then once we set the sensitivity, then it knows the difference between. So now we got it crossed right in the center. So why did we put it in the center? Because what we're doing is we say, okay, if it gets below this, it's seeing gray. If it gets above that, it's seeing white, right? You understand that? And that's the way we do it. Well, how do I know that? Well, I don't know where to set it unless I use that view option that's available on my what? On my controller. We'll get into more detail on using the offline programming later. But when we build it, we're going to do what? When we build it, we're going to use online programming. Very simple online programming. And how many squares do we have? We have 5. Well, that 5th one is not. So how many do we have in our real program? We got 4. And what does it do? It goes motor, sensor, motor, sensor. If you don't want to use a motor, you just leave it what? Blank. If you don't want a sensor, you just leave it blank. Right? You understand that? By default, I think it comes up to stop, so you have to select loop, I think. If you select stop, it'll do the program once. If you select loop, that's what it's going to do. It's going to keep running until you pick it up and hit that gray button. By the way, don't try to pick it up by the controller. Don't pick it up by the cables. I showed y'all the robot we're building, right? If you reach down and grab it by the ultrasonic sensor, what's going to happen? It's Lego, right? So what are you going to do? You're going to pull it off. So you grab your robot and pick it up. Just grab it up by the controller, and then to stop your program, what do you do? Yeah. The book is going to tell you how to run your NXT programs. We've got just about, when we get into the competition, I think all the programs in the competition are in the robot. By the way, what I want you to do today is while you're building your robot, the robot won't go into the kit anymore. Okay, so what are we going to do? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to put them in front of the kits. Well, how are you going to know which ones you are? The kits are going to be stapled up. Yeah, you're going to get a piece of masking tape and do what? Don't write it. This is not on the, by the way, I used Scotch tape. So I didn't write this on the controller. I can take this off. What I want y'all to do is just use a piece of masking tape. Put it down below here. Okay. And you just write you and your partner's name on there. And that way, while you're building the robot, it won't go in the kit anymore. And you don't have to leave these things out, right? All that makes sense? Everybody okay? By the way, what comes next? Bluetooth. We're not going to use what? Settings. We're not going to use what? Settings. So the only ones we're going to use is Try Me. Then we're going to use My Files. This is where, these are where your offline programs are going to be set up. So I'm going to have to get those and erase those. So, and then we're going to use the NXT programming. That's where we're going to use our what? That's where we're going to do our online programming. We're not going to use data logging. So you can literally have this thing keep up with things, that the moves it makes and all that thing, which is really neat. And then we're going to use View. So we're going to use View, what? NXT programming, My Files, and Try Me. That should be the only option for you. Right? Everybody okay? Any questions? Yes? No? Delete the programs, yeah. And what I'll do is